Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unacademy. In today's session, I'm going to have a discussion on CAT 19 passage. On this channel only, I have been taking up CAT 19 and CAT 18 passages, and we are discussing all the questions based on those passages. With that, I have also taken up some terms and phrases which appeared in those passages, so that you have greater understanding of phrases and terms which are associated with art, culture, and philosophy. Present again today with one more passage of CAT 9. For that, let me give you a brief introduction of myself. My name is Neelam Malkani. This is around 12 years of experience of test preparation industry and have trained students of CAT, GRE, GMAT, SAT, IELTS, and TOEFL. I've also designed and synthesized some papers of English and reasoning for various exams. I also served as an examiner of English for an international organization. Recently, I have authored a comprehensive book of English for the preparation of competitive exams. This video is brought to you by Unacademy, India's largest online portal for the preparation of competitive exams. Let me take you to its portal and tell you how you can be part of this. First, you have to download Unacademy Learning app from the Play Store and fill in all the details. It will be shown 3 courses plus free courses and special classes. If you want to attend classes for CAT, you have to go in the category of class. When you go in that category, you will be shown all the features that you are going to avail once you subscribe to this course, such as 30 hours of live session every day, on the portal. So with one subscription only, you will be able to see all these classes. As per your convenience, your availability, as per your suitability, you can choose your educator and your classes. The courses which are delivered on Plus platform are well structured and well designed by those people who have extensive experience of curriculum design. 14 plus top educators will deliver these courses. Educators who have wealth of experience of mentoring and guiding students in their respective fields. Every month, you get to see a new course being launched on Academy. Go in the subscription, you will see different models of subscription to suit your needs and your plan for this exam preparation. If you want to prepare for only CAT 2020, you can go for 1 month subscription or 3 month subscription. If you're planning for CAT 21, you can go for 6 months or 12 months subscription. They are best in the industry and they are very pocket friendly. Whichever model of subscription you choose here, if you want to avail 10% for discount, you have to type code Neelam. Right? So that's about Unacademy. This is another important information that I need to give you about National Scholarship Test. Starting from 18th of October, every Sunday, this test is conducted by Unacademy. Test is on the basis of the recent changes in the pattern of that have been brought this year. There are going to be 3 sectional tests: logical reasoning, data interpretation, quantitative aptitude, and reading comprehension and verbal ability. All 3 sections, which are part and parcel of CAT, will be given to you in this test. The day you take the test, you will be given detailed analysis of these sections. The detailed analysis will be taken up by a faculty who has designed this section. And you will also get to know about your All India ranking, because ultimately you are going to take exam on All India level, so you need to know what your position is. You will also come to know about your preparedness level for this exam this year. After attending the analysis, you can see what changes you need to bring in your strategy for taking the mock and finally taking the. So all these benefits over and above, if you are one of the top 50 scorers of this test, you stand a chance of winning Amazon voucher of rupees 5,000. This is a chance which you cannot afford to miss. Go enroll yourself and take the test this Sunday and see where you stand in terms of the preparation. Right? Let's get started with today's session, that is CAT 19 passage. Now, ever since I started taking the discussion of CAT 19 passages, I have been giving you the sources of these passages. The earlier discussion I had on previous passages, one of the passages was taken up from Atlantic newspaper. Passage was taken up from the Guardian newspaper. These international newspapers have come up as the reservoir of for examiners of CAT to select their articles or their passages. Now, and that is why I have been asking you people to start reading international newspapers. New York Times, The Atlantic, Guardian, and Washington Post. Some of these newspapers have been prominently covered in passages of different exams. Only CAT, other exams such as IFT, that will also pick up the articles in these newspapers. You better make yourself conversant with the different kind of subjects these newspapers cover, as well as the kind of writing style which is adopted by the authors who write for these newspapers. So these things are not going to be unfamiliar for you. You're not going to find anything startling or alien to take your exam. Completely unfamiliar with the style and the subjects which are given, may have difficulty in not only understanding but also solving the passage. You better acquaint yourself with the style and the subjects these newspapers are covering. As I have been saying, CAT has fixation for 3 to 4 subjects: art, literature, philosophy, and science, social science. So try to enhance your understanding of these subjects as well as different authors' articles written on these subjects. Right? Now, the passage that I've taken up today was taken from NPR National. That's an American website which is dedicated to media. It is a non-profit organization which also has public radio. Other than blog, other than a website, it also runs a public radio. So from this passage was taken up. 2018, this article was published in this website, and 2019 article was taken up as it is. The earlier passages which we took, or the earlier article which we discussed, they were used in a truncated form. They were curtailed by the examiner to suit their needs, right? But here, article as it is, as it was published on the website, was taken up to give as the passage. So you can read that article and see how these different websites as well as newspapers are used by the examiners of CAT to give you the passage. All right, so let's get started with today's passage. Passage was fairly doable, unlike those passages that we discussed last time. Those passages were tough, and the questions as well as the subject of passage was both tough, right? But now this passage is quite understandable, as well as the questions are also doable. Now I'll give you again 40 seconds time to read the passage. I have segregated them into a different paragraph so that you can have a thorough read and then we can discuss the questions. So give it a read and I'll give you 40 seconds time. Start. read it this and read it for you and try to translate it in simplified language so that you have a clear understanding of the whole slide. I boldface some parts of this paragraph so that you can understand how you can scan a passage by reading out the important details which possibly are helpful in answering the question. You can minimize your time of reading and you can also minimize load on your brain because you don't have to retain all the information. War, natural disasters, and climate change are destroying some of the world's most precious cultural sites. Brings the topic here. Google is trying to help preserve these archaeological wonders by allowing users access to 3D images of these treasures through its site. Topic, first sentence. Now the scope of the topic is these treasures are being preserved by, that's the scope, by creating the 3D images of these sites. But the project is raising questions about Google's motivation and about who should own the digital copyright. Two objections have been raised on this project of Google. One, motivation. What has dictated Google to do this? Second, who should own the digital copyright? These sites are scanned. Images are going to be taken up by Google. Who should own the copyright? These are two prominent objections. Some critics call it a form of digital colonialism. Right? This is a very strong word. Author has not given his opinion here. He says that critics have these two objections. Google is doing this. Right? So dispassionately, in the very first paragraph, he has stated in a matter of fact tone what he wants to write. Right? So from this first paragraph, you can easily come to know that this is happening. Like the sites are being scanned, the pictures are taken up by Google, but people have problem. Critics have mainly two objections. One, digital copyright. Second, the motivation of Google. And critics have called it digital colonialism. 3 lines. When it comes to archaeological treasures, the losses have been mounting. Second paragraph, he comes with this topic sentence. This paragraph is going to talk about the losses these archaeological sites have faced, isn't it? So you can skip this entire paragraph because to minimize your time of reading, you can understand what the topic sentence is saying. With that, author would like to illustrate his point that he has stated in the topic sentence. Facade to wrap itself in the sheen of culture. Ethan Wachall, an archaeologist, professor at the Michigan State University and a member of the Society for American Archaeology, says he is not comfortable with the arrangement between SIAC and Google. Professor is so all his designation, all his degrees can be put aside. I mean, you can always skip these inconsequential details. So a professor, he's a critic. So after critic, a professor has been cited, that means he's a critic. He says he's not comfortable with the arrangement between SIAC and Google. He says this project is just a way for Google to promote Google. Google says it is dictated by philanthropic objectives. It wants people to be more informed about these archaeological sites, cultural heritage. Whereas the critic says, and one of them is Wachall, he says that this is being used by Google to promote itself. This whole slide talks about what Google claims and what critics believe Google is doing by scanning the images of archaeological sites, right? So this paragraph states two major points. SIAC and Google's collaboration, and second, what it claims and what critics believe, especially one critic. Paragraph 3, take your time, finish it up, and then I'll read it for you. All right. Now, let me read it for you. They want to make this material accessible so people will browse it and be filled with wonder by it. Now, Mr. Watrall, the professor at Michigan University, has some issue with the arrangement or the collaboration of Google with SIAC. He says it's just there to put a sheen on their agenda. They have a different agenda. What that agenda is? They want to have more and more advertisement and traffic on their websites by putting up these pictures. Watrall says these images belong on the site of a museum and or educational institution where there is a serious scholarship and a very different mission. So he also has an objection to putting up these pictures, these images, scanned images on Google's website. He says these pictures belong to a museum's website or an education institutions where some scholarship work is done. Scholastic work is done. People do use these images for research or for educational purpose. Here they have different missions. So these are two prominent objections Mr. Watrall has put up. One, it's done for Google's advertisement. The more impressive these pictures are, the more will be traction on the website of Google. And with that, they are going to earn revenue. So he sees it as an ulterior motive. He says that this is not for the philanthropic purpose, this is for earning revenue. Second objection he has, these pictures would be more suitable or more appropriate to be used by an education institution or the website of a museum. Right? So these are two prominent objections he has raised. Now let's move on and read the last paragraph. There's another issue for some archaeologists and art historians. Remember very first paragraph. There were 2 points of objection. One, the Google's motivation, and second was copyright. Right? So Google's motivation is clear here. Second is about the copyright of these images. There's another issue for some archaeologists and art historians. SIAC owns the copyright of these scans, not the countries where these sites are located. If there is an archaeological site in Syria and images are taken by SIAC in Google, Google and SIAC collectively own the copyright of these images. That means the countries need SIAC's permission to use these images for commercial purposes. So if a company which is based in Syria wants to use the images of the temple, will have to take the permission of SIAC. Though the country is based in Syria and it has the ownership on that archaeological site, but it has to take the permission from other countries' company. Now, Erin Thompson, a professor of art crime at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, says it's the latest example of a Western nation appropriating a foreign culture, a century-long pattern. Right? So, another critic, a art historian, says that this is a kind of cultural hegemony. It's a dictatorship. So, you are taking the pictures of a foreign country's archaeological site, which is that country's cultural heritage. Just because you are taking the pictures and you are using those scanned images, now if somebody else has to use those scanned images, it will have to take your permission. Though maybe that country's government. Right? So if that country's government has to use the images of that archaeological site, it has to take the permission for different. Right? So appropriating, that is misusing. Remember, the very first paragraph author used here colonialism, it's digital colonialism. You are trying to confiscate the cultural heritage of another country. That's what one critic says. SIAC says, now comes the defense of SIAC. SIAC says it copyrights the scan so no one can use them in an inappropriate way. Right? So it comes with its defensive stand, which says that the copyright is owned by SIAC because these images should be protected. They should not be used in an inappropriate way. The company says it works closely with authorities during the process. So whichever country it takes these images in, whichever archaeological site it chooses to scan, it works with the authority. That means it is is working legally with that authority, even training local people to help. Right? So here comes the defense of SIAC. So very clearly, author's opinion is clearly missing here. Right? So author is dispassionately putting up what critics say and what companies are saying. So you see you see author's opinion completely missing here. But critics like Thompson are not persuaded. She would prefer the scans to be owned by the countries and people where these sites are. Right? She is not persuaded. Sayak says it works with the authority and it is owning the copyright because it wants no one to take these images or use these images inappropriately. But these two defense or these two opinion of Sayak do not persuade the critic. She still feels these images, these scanned images, should be given to the company, the archaeological site. Right? So this is how we come to the end of the paragraph or the passage, and we understand three prominent points. Google is doing something. Critics have objection to it. Prominently two objections. Its motive. Second, who should own these images, right? And these critics have been given their position clearly. Now let's understand. Let's see the questions. The first question says, in Dr. Thompson's view, it is the second critic, SIAC owning the copyright of its digital scan of archaeological site is akin to. So you are asked to draw a comparison. You are asked to draw parallel between what has been stated by Dr. Thompson's and what it is similar to. Akin is nothing but similar to, right? Now, I hope you remember what Dr. Thompson says in the paragraph or in the passage. He said, 1. SIAC owns the copyright of the scan. Now, the countries where these sites are located, that means the countries need SIAC's permission. So, it is an latest example of a Western nation appropriating a foreign culture, a century-long battle. He gave this phrase, a century-long battle against colonialism, where Western countries seized the authority and the resources of Eastern countries or other countries, right? So Western countries try to, with their imperialistic policies, try to control and dominated other countries. That's the example she paralleled this whole situation with. So what is going to be the answer? Let's look at first. The seizing of ancient Egyptian artifacts by a Western museum. So she gave the example of a century-long battle where Eastern nation fought fierce battle against colonial powers, their liberation, for their freedom. So if that is true, this should be the answer. Right? So let's hold it. Let's read the option. The illegal downloading of content from the internet. So she very clearly said Western nations controlling other nations' resources. So this is not the illegal downloading can be by a person who is living in an eastern part of the country, right? So that's not the answer. Tourist uploading photos of monuments onto social media. She does not have any objection with that. So that's out of context. Digital platforms capturing users' data for market research. So that's also not stated. And what she really intends here is that these foreign companies, especially the Western companies or Western countries, are using the resources of Eastern countries for their own benefits, right? So what really comes close to this analogy is A, the seizing of ancient Egyptian artifacts by a Western museum. All right, so answer is A. Question 2 says, of the following arguments, which one is least likely to be used by the companies that digitally scan cultural sites? I hope you understand what this question is asking you to do. It is asking you to choose an option which is not going to be used by these companies to defend themselves. right? So when they face these objections, when they face these criticisms by archaeologists or by academic professors, which of these is not going to be used by these companies to defend their position? Option first, it helps preserve precious images in case the sites are damaged or destroyed. Now, if you remember, one of the temples of Syria, which was destroyed by earthquake, right after that, author said it is changing now. It is changing now. That means because of these images, one can still see and even wander in, have a digital wander in those temples. That means that is possibly going to be used by these companies to support their cause, right? Even after these sites are destroyed, they are turned into ruins, their images, scanned images, will make them as they were earlier, digital form, right? So that way, this position or this argument is definitely going to be used by the companies. It provides images free of cost to all. They are not differentiating between users. So they are using for academic purpose, or they are using it for commercial purpose, or for any other purpose. For all the users who want to see these images, they are free, right? So that way, will also bolster their position that they want to disseminate the information of these archaeological sites to all the users. That's what their position was, right? That way, this is definitely going to bolster their position. They are going to use this argument. See, it enables people who cannot physically visit these sites to experience them, right? So you are sitting at home, you want to visit an archaeological site, but you cannot afford to go there because you are possibly physically challenged or you have some problems. You cannot walk around, you cannot have you cannot take the pains of walking around in that at the comfort of your home. Still visit the site because of these scanned images. Definitely going to empower people, and that is going to bring benefit to those people who are disadvantaged. So this way, this opinion will definitely be used by the companies to augment their cause, right? So A, B, C will be used by the companies, but D, let's look at D. It allows a large corporation to protect itself as a protector of. Now this is what critics would say, that it is not motivated by a philanthropic objective. It's not doing because it wants to empower people. Rather, it wants to come off as a company, as a corporation, which is the protector of culture. That is what critics are going to say. That it has an ulterior motive. It is nothing but image building, brand building, right? That is what critics are going to say. This will not be used by companies to defend their position. Alright, so that is why D is the answer, because D is least likely to be used by these companies to protect or to convince their critics. Right? Answer is D. Number 3. Which of the following, if true, would most strongly invalidate Dr. Watrall's objections? Mr. Watrall was the first critic who had 2 objections. Right? So I very clearly gave you 2 different critics and 2 different objections. So he had the objection with his motive. Said they are using it for increasing their revenue, and these images belong to an education site or museum. Right? So these were 2 objections. Now, which of which of the following, if true, would most strongly invalidate his objection? Let's understand. So this is nothing but weakening his position. Which of them is going to prove him wrong? You know, sometimes paraphrasing is required to understand the passage. Sometimes paraphrasing will also be required to understand the question, the stamp, what it is asking you to do. This is asking you to do, this is asking you to choose the option which is going to prove Mr. Watrall wrong. So we understand his 2 objections. Let's look at the options. Sayad uploads scanned images of archaeological sites onto museum websites. If this is true, this is definitely going to weaken one of his objections. He said his objection was Google's motive, and second was that these images belong to an educational site or a museum. Because those people who are interested in these cultural heritage would always visit the site of a museum. So that is the perfect or appropriate place for these scan images. Definitely going to be this position, but let's understand other options as well. Google takes down advertisement on its website hosting SIA scanned. Now, we have been told that Google works with other NGOs, profit organizations. One of them is SIA. Does not mean that it works only with SIA. Second, Mr. Watrolls does not have any objection with where the advertisement says that this is done for bringing more and more advertisement, more and more revenue, right? So this is definitely not going to bring down the effect of the argument. So B is not the answer. C, there is a ban on SIAPs scanning archaeological sites located in other countries. It does not say anything about banning these. It says that the motive is different and these images belong to this. These are two cardinal points, cardinal objections he has put up. Your weakening and strengthening will be done on these two primary points only, right? Something which he has not stated, he cannot be weakened on that part, right? Because उसने ये कहा ही नहीं है, तो उसको हम गलत इस बेस पे साबित कर ही नहीं सकते. That's the focal point. D. SIAC does not own the copyright on scanned images of our sites. Now, this is an eyewash option. So, who should own these images and who should have the copyright of these images was the issue with other professors, not with Watrolls. Dr. Thompson had the issue with this copyright images, right? This was created by examiner just to trick you, right? So don't, become prey to these traps. So this was given just as a trap to you, that this was also the objection, but this was not the objection of Watrolls. So please understand these things clearly. So D is also not the answer. Answer is clearly A. Because if these images are uploaded only on museum website, that means Mr. Watrolls' objection is nullified. Right? He said that these images should be the property of a museum or an educational site because the objective is different. Right? So if it is done by SIA, that means Mr. Watrolls' objection is automatically right? So answer is A. So understanding the passage clearly will help you immensely in doing the question. So in CAT passages, as I have always said, please try to paraphrase it, read paragraph by paragraph, understand it, simplify in your own language, make yourself understand what this whole paragraph is saying, then move on and try to find connection, try to find that logical connection. Eventually, whole skeleton of the passage is going to be clear before you, as if it's running before you. Let's do question number 4. Based on his views mentioned in the passage, one could best characterize Mr. Watrolls as being his views. We have to see what his character may be, or how can he be best characterized as. His views. Again, 1. Google's objective, motive. So the motive is not philanthropic objective, rather is to earn revenue by putting up these. Second objection, sites or these images should be with a museum or an education. So how can you characterize Mr. Watrolls? Opposed to the use of digital technology in archaeological and cultural sites in developing countries. Out of context. Absolutely out of context, because this did not say anything about digital developing countries. And no mention of his being antagonistic of technology. He said Google and SIAC, this combination is using this for commercial purpose. He did not mean that he is against technology. Very overstated option. So A is outrightly eliminated. B. Dismissive of lay people's access to specialist images of archaeological and cultural sites. He said these images belong to museum which will be frequented by common people only, because those people who would be interested in historic and cultural heritage. Same time, they are lay people. That means he did not have anything against lay people's wishes and desires to have these images or to see these images. Nowhere he is dismissive of this thing. Again, B is also eliminated. C. Critical about the links between a non-profit and a commercial tech platform for distributing archaeological images. Let's hold it. Let's see B. Now, it's uneasy about the marketing of archaeological images for commercial use by firms such as Google and so on. Now, B is something which we tend to believe, but nowhere this is mentioned to be passive. SciArc and Google clearly say they are using it for disseminating information, for making people more informed. Uneasy about the marketing of archaeological images for commercial use, this is what we believe, right? But here, nowhere passage says, nowhere Mr. Wakshaw says that they are going to use it. But what C is, very clearly he said, let me take you paragraph. The collaboration could be an attempt by a large corporation to wrap itself in the sheen of culture. Wakshaw says this project is just a way for Google to promote Google. They want to make this material accessible to people, will browse it and be filled with wonder by it. But at its core, it's all about advertisement and driving traffic. He says these images belong on the side of a museum or educational institution where there is serious scholarship and a very different. Very clearly critical about the links between a non-profit and a commercial tech platform for distributing archaeological images. They don't have the right. They should not have this association distribute archaeological images. Right? He said that they have different mission. So he has problem with that. Whether they are doing it for commercial purpose or not, they are using these images for commercial purpose or not, that's not. Nowhere he said. That's what we possibly formed as our opinion of reading of the back. Right? Mr. Wakshaw is very clear on his opinion. Right? The answer is C. D was very close option, but when you read this part again, you can easily come to your answer as C. This was one of the tough questions of this passage. Otherwise, other questions were very easy. Fifth question. By digital colonialism, critics of SciArc Google project are referring to the fact that first paragraph used digital colonialism. So if you understand this term well and you understand the usage of this term and how this used in different contexts like colonialism, that is hegemonic policy, kind of policy which is going to dictate other countries or those countries which are dominion, which are inferior. Digital colonialism, so you are controlling this country's archaeological sites through digital imprint. Look at the options, what it may mean. SciArc and Google have been scanning images without copyright permission from host country. Now, this is not possibly the meaning of colonialism. The last, Dr. Thompson's objection was these countries do not own images of their own resources. These sites, these cultural places belong to these countries. And the scanned images and the copyright of these scanned images belong to foreign company. That is what is the whole objection. And last, the paragraph ended with the statement, she is not persuaded by the defense of SciArc. She says these copyright images should belong to the country where these archaeological sites are situated in. Right? This is digital colonialism. Very first paragraph, use this term it was actually referring to the second opinion, second objection, second option. The scanning process can damage delicate frescoes and status at the sites. Out of context completely. Nowhere in the passage this has been mentioned. SIAC and Google have not shared the details of digitization with the host countries. Countries where the scan sites are located do not own the scan copyrights. Very clearly, go through the passage, understand Dr. Thompson's objection clearly, you will come to know that D is your answer. Colonialism is trying to control or try to seize resources of other countries and manipulate and exploit those resources for your own advantage. What Britishers did to our resources, right? So that way colonialism is perfectly aptly described in this situation where a company, a foreign company, an American company is taking the scan pictures of an archaeological site in Syria or Myanmar and owning it, and other companies or other countries, and they have to use same country, let's say Syria, and they have to use these images, it will have to take the permission to use the images of its own archaeological sites. That way, this is what is the objection of the thought. Right? So this was fairly doable passage, easy to understand, passage was easy to follow through, and the questions were also fairly understandable. Right? So no question was based on inference. Simple question was based on application, where you had to see what Mr. Potter's characteristic, right, characterized as. So that way, a bit of application was there. Otherwise, all the questions were based on your understanding of the passage. Right? As I have been saying in my classes, that basically these passages will test three skills. One, your understanding. Second, your analysis. Third, your application. So, most of the passages which are easy will test your understanding. Clearly, you have understood what author wants to tell you in the passage. What ideas are, what the supporting details are, tone, supporting details, examples, all these will fall into the category of understanding based questions. Analysis, where you are asked to strengthen, weaken, understand the flaw in his reasoning, what is going to be forwarded by author as a supporting detail. These are questions which will ask you to analyze. So one of the questions asks you to analyze here. Another set of questions which is going to test your application part. In recent years, CAT has started giving one question which is based on application. So if you remember the last passage which we did for folk music, so if author attends a seminar on folk music, so what argument will he put forward? Passages about economics, an author has put forward views. Now, the question may be, if the same author has same line of argument, what would be his opinion on an issue of politics? Application part, right? So from the context of the paragraph, understand what author is like and what his profession may be, what his line of argument may be, and then apply it to a different context. That is application based. A passage is going to be mixed bag of all these questions based on understanding. Major proportion will be based on understanding. One or two questions will be based on your application and analysis part. Now try to figure out which part you are good at. You are allowed to leave question. You are allowed to skip questions. There is no penalty for leaving a question. So if you are fairly good at understanding, please attempt questions which ask you to understand. Leave out the question which asks you to apply. You don't have to attempt all the 5 questions. That's how you can minimize your confusion, and that's how you can minimize your wrong attempts. Because CAT is again an accuracy-based exam. So among these 5 questions, whichever you felt you could easily do, you could have done those questions and skip those questions that you could not mark. Even if you are able to eliminate one option and 3 options are still confusing, you should leave that. Don't feel compelled to mark that question just because you have read entire passage. You have already done 3. Right? One question is puzzling, baffling, leave it. don't feel obligated to attempt that question despite not being clear about it. Alright, so this was Cat 19 passage in slot 2. Tomorrow again I'm going to do one more passage with you, but before that let me take you to some of the words that I found are worth discussing which appeared in this passage. So restoration. So the work of repairing and cleaning an old building, painting so that its condition is as good as it originally was. So that is what is restoration. So these places, restoration work at these places, at these archaeological sites. So we have Harappa civilization archaeological sites, which are the border of India and Pakistan. Most of them are in Punjab, part of Pakistan. So Harappa, Mohenjo-daro. So whenever our archaeological these archaeological sites are excavated or they are researched by people who are from Archaeological Survey of India, so they try to restore these sites, right? So that the, the everything which is there, sites are preserved in the condition they are earlier, right? That way restoration work is done. There is a very old dilapidated building in Bhopal which is Taj Mahal. Right? So there was a Begum Shah Jahan, Bhopal for quite a long period of time. So there is a Taj Mahal. One Taj Mahal is of course in Agra, the Taj Mahal is in Bhopal, a building which is known as Taj Mahal. So that restoration work in that building is going on. So in its old legacy, in its old form, the building is being restored. So that way you can understand what restoration means. So the palace is closed for restoration. So restoration work is being done. That's why the palace is closed. The act of bringing back a system is also restoration, right? So the restoration of diplomatic relationship between the two countries. The countries severed their diplomatic ties. There was some problem. That's why they ended their diplomatic ties. The diplomats were called out, and now there is a restoration of diplomatic relationship. The restoration of democracy or the restoration of monarchy. So if there is a country where there used to be monarchy, there used to be a monarch or king, and then democracy was there, and now again people have voted for having a king again. So that is restoration of monarchy. So you can understand restoration by archaeological site as well as restoring a system which previously existed. Now this word also appeared in this passage. All these archaeologists had their intuition, remnant sites and images and pictures. So remnant is something which is a part of something that is left after the other parts have been used. So something which is left over is remnant. So remains, you understand remains, right? So there were a big statue of Lord Buddha in Bamiyan, Afghanistan, which was dismantled or which was destroyed by Taliban there. So now the remnant of that famous statue is there. Remnant is Bache Avshesh, right? So remains. The woods are remnants of a huge forest which once covered the whole area. So that way you can understand that now the forest has been destroyed and now there are remnants of the wood, of the forest in form of wood. Many of the traditions are remnant of a time when most people worked on the land. So remnant, that can also be used in this way. The traditions, the culture which remained, which was prevalent earlier, some parts of that cultural traditions are still prevalent, are still used, or still followed. So that way you can see that they are the remnant of earlier culture. The museum is one of the last remnant of the 17th century pattern. So remnant is something which is the leftover part, the remains. Now this digital rendition, this is how this word came into this passage. The rendition you must have used, or you must have seen coming for music or passages which are based on art or music. Performance of something is rendition, especially a song or piece of music. Particular way in which this is performed. Interpretation is also rendition. The band gave a live rendition of their latest single, right? So you can understand rendition by, so here digital rendition. So these pictures are the digital rendition, digital form of art, because archaeological sites are nothing but the representation of art. That way these pictures are also digital rendition. The practice of sending foreign suspects to be questioned in another country where the laws about the treatment of prisoners are less strict. So that is also rendition, the two usage of rendition. They claimed that there had been rendition fights via Scotland. The move was an attempt to legalize extraordinary rendition. So don't be confused if this word is used in this context. This means you send one foreign suspect to be questioned in another country because in your country you have a very strict law about the prisoners of other countries, right? You send them to other country where you have ties with, and you let the questioning and the investigation happen there so that you gather all the information because the laws are less strict, right? And this person is a foreigner, right? So that way you can understand two meanings of rendition. So here the use which was the usage which was there in this passage was about creation. Appropriate. Now, Thompson, or Professor Thompson, who said that this is cultural hegemony, or this is digital colonialism. She said that it's like these cultural legacies are being appropriated by Western countries. So appropriate is to take something like someone's idea, someone's resources for your own use, especially illegally or without any. Google, with its sophisticated technology, has taken these scanned pictures of these because it has those satellites, right? So with the help of those satellites, the images have been taken without taking the permission. Possibly these images have been taken, scanned, and then copyright has also been given to the company. He was accused of appropriating club funds. So here he was misusing the fund of club. Some of the opposition parties' policies have been appropriated by the government. So that way you can understand appropriate as a verb. So you don't confuse appropriate as it is appropriate. When we see it is appropriate. So that's an adjective. Please use appropriate language in a classroom, adjective, right? So behave in an appropriate way, that's also adjective. But when we use appropriate as a verb, the funds have been appropriated. Here it's used as a verb, and as a verb it will always have this meaning, this using something. So here the sites are appropriated by these companies. So here I come to the end of today's session, CAT passage of 2019. Thank you very much for watching and being part of this session. I hope I could help you in understanding the passage well as addressing the questions. I'm going to discuss one more passage tomorrow, so stay tuned on this channel and do tell me what your thoughts and opinion are about these sessions. And please share with me topics and what issues you want to cover